got that camera pointing straight toward us.
I told her to focus it on you.
The other ones are always pointed at you, you just don't realize it.
It's zoomed in on you.
And I've started recording already, so.
Oh, it's not there.
We have 1 minute. So,
Oh, well.
yeah, now we have to watch what we're saying. She's recording.
There's chairs over here, y'all can grab these chairs too.
You just decide this one.
April, that email that just come from Bill, just answer them back that they need to contact Jeff Church to get that information.
Okay, I'll look at it.
They're asking about,
Jamie, you can pull one of those chairs if you want.
all this sort of thinking. All right, so it's time we will reconvene the meeting for the Scotland County Board of Commissioners for April 30th, 2025. We'll start with an approval of the agenda, but before we do that, we need to make an ad, and I think we probably put it in between 2 and 3, which is a rescue squad presentation
Or request.
for request, and one between 12 and 13, or we can do it between 11 and 12 on a temporary assignment discussion. But I don't even know that I don't know that we shouldn't do that in closed session. Should we, Monty? Should that?
I don't know what you're saying. Is it a personnel related matter that he's talking about?
Yeah.
What you and I talked about, I thought we were talking about rescue squad. I think, yes, how would they close?
So we'll just add a closed session to the end
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
All right, but with that, changes in the agenda, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? And we have a second,
Yes.
we have a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Right on to Mr. Terrence Williams, IEJ presentation, and you can stay there if you want to, you don't have to stand up.
Okay. So we're gonna have Ms. Nicole Priest, who represents ROC and Future Scots of United, and she's gonna lead us in that presentation.
All right. Good day, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of the Scotland County Board of Commissioners. I'm Nicole Priest. Like you said, I represent ROC Inc. And I'm here to share a brief presentation with you guys with our vision of I.E. Johnson, the community building here in Lombard. And I just want to thank you guys in advance for your time this morning and giving us this opportunity. Let's see. So up on the screen is basically what we have here, but I'm just gonna read from here. You guys may have a copy already anyway.
We do that, I think it's
Okay.
up there too.
So ROC Inc. stands for Reaching Our Children in Need of Choices. And we are a 501c3, not-for-profit, community-based organization specializing in day treatment, after-school tutorial programs, and summer enrichment programs. Our mission is to provide effective solutions for youth-wide social, emotional, or behavioral challenges, enhance mental agility, foster positive relationships, and offer culturally inclusive activities to help children build fruitful and abundant lives. The purpose of this presentation is to request that the Scotland County Board of Commissioners designate Rock Inc. as the executive agent for the I.E. Johnson Community Center at 815 McGurk Bridge Road here in Laurinburg. Rock Inc. would be assuming all responsibilities for programming, maintenance, and physical management while keeping the center open and accessible for community use. Why Rock Inc.? Our experience and community impact has a proven track record in youth services. We have over a decade of experience delivering evidence-based, inclusive programming for children of all ages and backgrounds. Our deep roots are in Scotland County, in the Scotland County community, with a history of successful partnerships and positive outcomes for at-risk and at-promise youth. We focus on improving mental agility and peer relationships, reducing risky behaviors through root cause interventions, and building bridges between families, schools, and the broader community. Our approach will be using holistic, trauma-informed care, culturally relative and inclusive activities, and engagement with families and local stakeholders. Our vision for the IEJ Community Center will be maximizing the community value and accessibility. The IEJ Community Center is formerly known as the I.E. Johnson Elementary. It is a newly renovated historic facility with the county's best gym and updated amenities. Rock Inc.'s proposal would be to assume full responsibility for programming, maintenance, and the physical management, expand capacity for youth and family services, including the after-school programs, summer programs, and special events, ensuring the center remains open for community use as well. That's including rentals and public gatherings. And to build on the center's legacy as a touchstone to the past and a beacon for the future community growth. It will serve several benefits for Scotland County. Community-based leadership will offer, it'll place responsibility in the hands of an organization that's deeply rooted in the local context. It relieves the county burden. This will free the county resources from day-to-day management and programming, allowing focuses on other priorities. Evidence-based programming. Rock Inc. brings expertise in developing and sustaining impactful, research-driven programs. Increased engagement. It empowers residents, fosters volunteerism, and builds community pride and ownership. The fiscal responsibility. Rock Inc. will manage all operational and maintenance costs, seeking grants and partnerships to maximize the impact. And sustain community access. The commitment to keeping the facility open and accessible for all ages and backgrounds. A partnership for the future. Building capacity, hope, and community resilience. Rock Inc. is uniquely positioned to bridge the gap between government and community, ensuring programming and facility management align with local needs and aspirations. Our stewardship will foster partnerships among citizens, organizations, and local leaders, serve as a beacon of hope and opportunity for the youth and their families, and will reflect the Board of Commissioners' commitment to community-driven progress and prosperity. Today we requested the board to approve Rock Inc. as executive agent for the IEJ Community Center and join us in building a sustainable, vibrant future for Scotland County's children and families. In the words of our mayor, Jim Willis, this is not just a building, it's a touchstone to the past, a place where all ages and backgrounds come to exercise, learn, and socialize. And we just want to thank you for your consideration, and we look forward to partnering with you guys for the future of Scotland County.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Well,
Well, I've got a question, so I'll ask it straight up, and this is more of an April question and maybe an Ed question, Ed Johnston question. Part of that building's already committed to Southeastern Economic.
That's the northern part, right?
The
We call it the
annex.
annex.
It's a part that we're not currently in.
Right, yes, that extra, if you're facing it over to the left. But everything on that was on hold because of the building behind that they're gonna do, right? Because we couldn't do
Well-
anything because of,
It is kind of a multi-dimensional thing. One thing, that annex building, the cost to bring that up to code is well over $1 million.
right,
And so, we knew the county wasn't investing that cost. I'm not sure that SCAP is going to invest that cost to make it their administrative offices. So, but you are correct in that you cannot deed them that or that property until the environmental study was done under the INCOR grant.
right, because
So
it's
there-
all deeded to us.
Yes.
But the front part of that building, the main building, is probably gonna be that or that much more.
Absolutely,
To
because in
redo.
order to use the cafeteria in the main building or any of those classrooms, the front
Right.
part, will take total upgrade of the bathrooms. And we know that's, at this point, that's probably $500,000.
Well, that don't count those heating and air systems in there.
Absolutely, so,
But they tore up the flooring, Mike's gonna hear this.
What, where?
That's what I.
Not all of it, just some of it. They
Well,
just-
what floor did
Why?
they tear up? I knew they tore up the floor in the cafeteria
We don't
because
know
they
why.
had to fix a pipe or something down there. Somebody said they took that asbestos floor out. That was the idea, if we left the tile that was there, we didn't have to mess with the
Right.
asbestos.
right, yeah, I don't think there's plans to pull up the entire floor.
Well,
I
other
swear
than
somebody
just,
had told me
like
that
you
the
said,
floor had already been took out.
I
Well,
don't know
why?
if the floor's gone.
That's what I'm saying,
When
I'm
when
not
I,
aware
when I
that the
looked at
floor
it, they
has
had
been
took a
removed.
couple rooms out, the flooring out.
The tile. And I don't know who.
I don't know why they did it.
I don't know, well, we didn't.
I do not think that all the floor in the cafeteria has been taken out.
No,
Last
it was
time I
a
was there-
spot about the size of this right here that they had taken out, but that was because they had to get to a pipe or something.
Yes, to do some repairs for the.
But I mean, the other floor part, I don't know, maybe we're getting off.
Well,
on-
yeah, our
we're getting
plan,
off
we
on
hoped our plan was to take the cafeteria, as you said, use the floor in it, put some paint in it. But then permitting won't allow you to open that and expand the capacity of the building without having more bathrooms.
And then
So it's kind of a
parking was an
catch-22.
issue as well.
Yeah, 'cause we were planning to pave that area in front of the gym.
Right. And the parking is still budgeted, but we have to wait on the environmental study from the INCOR grant before we can
do
touch
that.
the grants,
Right.
right?
No, we're just talking through all these problems that we know are already there.
Right, Tim, have we got any word from Southeast on what their plans are?
They're waiting, as far as I know, they're waiting on that environmental thing to,
They are, that's where we were, that's where we are.
and have been for a year and a
Yeah,
half.
and Beth and I have been in at least 2 conferences with INCOR, the funder. And if you remember, the funding has to come through the county, and then we manage the funding, allowing SCAP to do the building, if that makes sense.
The reason I
But
say
we are
that,
still waiting on that.
the reason I say that, I went to the Head Start Center down on Corona,
Right,
which they own as well.
right.
And there's no action going on in there, no kids, haven't been a kid in that building in a year or two. Our kids now are going to.
You're on the board.
We're supposed to have a meeting next,
And I think that's,
well, yes.
that's a tragedy for Scotland.
But they were active there at one time.
Very, very for years. You got a lot of kids that come through that program, end up going to college and they filter through our system and do pretty well.
Because they put a new building there.
They added on to the classroom for, as far as capacity, and then it shut down. And there's been a lot of concern of why we don't have any kids in that building.
That's the first I've heard that.
Oh,
uh,
uh,
I
oh,
tell you,
I'd almost like to back up to a more fundamental question. I mean, IEJ is a community resource, right? So if we're gonna make a decision about changing the model for IEJ, I think that ought to be a community decision. And I think we ought to have a public forum. We ought to allow any interested nonprofit who wants to if we like this model, and any
Well-
interested nonprofit should be able to compete to serve in this role.
Well, my concern with that is that there, to me, if we're gonna do it, I'd rather do it with somebody local that we know that.
Yeah,
knows.
But I'm talking about local.
Well, we had a guy from Fayetteville get North Longburn, and that takes it out of the hands of Scotland
But
County.
I'm just saying, if we set up a committee to advertise this and say to the nonprofits in Scotland County, hey, this is the change that we're contemplating for the management of IEJ as a community resource, here's your chance to compete, because if we make a decision today and do this, where's the dialogue with every other nonprofit in the county? It's gonna kind of feel like we kind of did this out of hand. And we ought to hear from other nonprofits, because I think one of the key components of executive agency is that you make this available to other nonprofits. So I'm sure other nonprofits are gonna wanna know, how's that gonna work? You know, how are you gonna make sure that we can still use the facility? And why did you pick them? Why didn't you ever consider anyone else? So I like the concept. I think executive agency is the right model, but I think we ought to have some sort of forum and give these nonprofits a chance to say, what about me? Let me be the executive agent, and then we have a process and then pick one.
Well, whoever takes this, or if that happens, and I know it's in the presentation about handling the maintenance and the upkeep and all that stuff, that's a big chunk. That's
It
a
is,
big
and not
chunk.
every
That-
nonprofit
That's
can
kind
do
of my
that.
point.
Well,
To your
yeah.
point, I think anyone who is interested in, including, this group, we need to give you information on what it takes to keep up I.E. Johnson,
Well, I think that,
because you'd probably be shocked.
I think that the first thing that we're not looking to change the conditional use of the facility. What we're doing is we're seeking to add additional program to whatever we have. We are certainly, and if additional presentation is necessary, then we can definitely have that discussion, but we are prepared to not only do additional studies within the community to ascertain the additional needs, but we also prepared to do any environmental studies to facilitate that. This is, I guess, and I don't know, most of you guys were not around, but when we first started doing IEJ, we've kind of done studies on several buildings in the community. We started out with North Laurinburg, then we went to South Scotland, and then with the IEJ piece. IEJ has determined or become what it is based upon my first program or proposal that I did with the board. And so we see a fragment of what is currently there based upon the proposal that the ROC had presented several years ago. At that time, we made a proposal to put an upwards of $500,000 into the upkeep and the initial maintenance to get that facility started. And so the county decided that it was in the best interest that they assume responsibility. And so we wanted to just come back and say, listen, we see that the building is being underutilized, and it could be a greater use for the community by having the entire facility, or much of it as possible, to be utilized for community use. And so that's our position. We serve, right now, we are in 3 different counties, and we serve, that was 1,500 to 1,700 kids a year, and we want to continue that same thing within Scotland County. And so that's the facility that right now that's available for us to accommodate that. And once again, we're not closing out any nonprofit, and I think that any nonprofit that is interested, certainly if you decide to have a forum, that's fine too. But I think that we want to be progressive and move things forward based upon our position here today. So I think all aboard that's coming aboard, but we want to let you know that we are serious about being able to make a full investment into the community that I live in, and we want to make sure that you know, just kind of understood that from that position.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns about your ability at this point, or your desire to do it. I think it's just more about having an open process where you invite others, and if others say, we're not interested in taking on that role, we're not financially capable of taking it on, don't compete. But I think at the end of the day, we should have an open, competitive process, and people should have full disclosure about what they're getting into in terms of condition and requirements.
That was my point.
Yeah, so all of that needs to happen, and I think it would be, I think that must happen. I think it would be inappropriate to make a decision and pick somebody at this point without any other consultation with the community by this group. And I don't see this as being a long process, but if we buy things, we need to get 2 or 3 bids when we buy things with the county. We're deciding to deed property and change a community asset. We would be well advised to get some input on that.
Well, I don't think we would redeed that.
I don't think we can, because we're the recipient of the Incor grant.
Right, well, that's part of it too.
And that
But
one,
see,
that's why we can't deed the property over to SCAP now, because of that grant we're receiving.
But see, these are some of the questions that Ed needs to be brought in on, and we need to really understand, because the person who makes this commitment also wants to understand, am I a renter or am I an owner, right? It's a lot of
Or not
money.
just the agent, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, I get it.
I just think there needs to be a little bit more that goes into this, because conceptually, I think it's a good idea. But I think we need to do it in a way that invites the community in, so that we don't end up in a place we didn't intend to be.
Well, the first thing that's gonna be said is, why didn't you have it open?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
that's the first thing. I can hear the phone calls now. Whether they could afford it or not, it's a different story.
That's right.
But, cause I don't think many people know exactly what they're fighting off with that out there, so.
Well, how would we go about it? Yeah, how would you like to go
I
about
think we
it?
advertise it.
Advertising, then
Yeah, I think we should,
what time frame for an advertising? How long?
yeah.
I don't know what if we were to have
I think we would put out like a request for proposal, which would allow us to gather all the information about the building, put that in there.
but I think we should also have like a forum out there.
That's what I mean, we
Community
push that
become-
out, and anybody that's interested, they have a due date to turn in their request.
Yeah.
We require what goes in that proposal, you know, things like, how are you gonna fund the building? This is what it takes, how are you gonna do that? So,
Yeah.
Well,
that's
that
what we do
community's
for
always
projects.
responded to,
Exactly.
when we had it in this room, you may remember this. This room was packed when we were talking about doing that as a rec center.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they would show up too for that, to hear the ideas and support, or maybe not, or whatever. And go along with what they decide, instead of us, you know, making that decision, so.
So I guess I'd like to table this until we determine a process that can be open and transparent about both the requirements and the expectations of this, and hear from other nonprofits. I mean, there may be 2 or 3 in the whole county who are even interested.
But at least we put it out.
At least we gave people an opportunity to be heard.
Yeah.
No,
What would our advertising frame be, requirement, 10 days, 14 days?
I would assume 10 days. Again, we have to look that up, confer with Mr. Johnston, if you want to do that for a public forum before you even like put a request for proposals out.
But we would have to
Advertise.
do it as a special meeting for us, if we're all gonna be there.
Yeah, unless you're gonna just take it up during one of your regular commissioner meetings, you could do that also.
Well, but not if we're gonna do it out there, cause I think
Oh,
it should
you're
be
talking about
done.
doing
Yeah,
it
doing
at
it out there.
John's? Yes,
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
be a special meeting.
And you should invite every nonprofit that's interested based on your advertisement, and talk about the project itself and the vision of it, and then give them X amount of time to put together a proposal if they're interested.
You know, one of the things I just want to recommend in that process is that, this board, kind of really establish exactly, you know, what their intent is as well. Because what we don't want to have is a coup to start coming in saying that we are going to destroy the legacy of IEJ and we are closing down IEJ and not making it a community and things of that nature. You know, once again, our commitment is to include the entire community, and conditional use and the current use is staying intact. And the only thing that we're doing is initially utilizing the unused portion in hopes to continue to develop and to move this thing expeditiously. One of the things is, you know, in the political process and arena, and I do understand that, but, you know, we got to think, as long as, you know, when we keep kicking this thing down the road, and, you know, we still have, lives that are on hold, because, you know, we can't find out how, you know, to logistically move forward. I think that, we would like to move now. The
Well,
summer is coming.
Part of the issue with that for us has been is we fully intended to use that front end of the building, but we have two obstacles. Number one, it's got to be redone, some electrical, heating and air, the bathrooms, before it can be used for that. And the other was, even if that was completely done now, we still can't use it, because you have to get the permitting, you have to have X amount of parking spaces. You can't build the parking space because we're waiting on this environmental study for the housing that CCAP wants to build behind it, back there in the field, where the old baseball field.
And that's another thing,
Yeah.
that football field or practice field, baseball field, all that will be housing. So you go in and
Yeah, they've already got the funding for that.
Yes,
I mean,
that's the
well,
funding I keep referring to.
they got it, but they got to come
Income
through us. But anyway, so that's kind of been why we stopped where we are now, because we can't do anything because of that environmental study. And I know that sounds crazy, and it's been going on a while, but that's basically why we had to stop.
Well, I think that's why it's important, if your intentions are to go down this road, people understand what they are getting and what they're not getting.
Right.
Usable space at I. Johnson is not abundant right now. People think there's this huge building, but the only usable space by permit right now is the gym, the old library, and the bathrooms.
That's it.
That's it.
On the bathrooms on the end that we
And
did.
like the single person bathrooms. And so classrooms can't be used, cafeteria can't be used, and so it is limited space for use. My point being, people need to understand, if you wanna do this, that's all you're gonna get to use without a huge capital investment.
Right, and there's no sense in making that capital investment right now until the parking part, because if you, like I said, if you redid the whole part of that new build, or the front of that building today, and it was brand new, everything in it was new, we still can't use it because we don't have parking. And so you can't get a permit for the use of that until you have X amount of parking spaces, which we have the money for, and the okay to do it, but again, we're waiting on the environmental study before that can.
So, Mr. Chair, just to be clear, we understand the risk reward for us is worth the investment, and we are certainly prepared to ready to move forward on that.
I get it, I
whenever-
understand.
And so whenever you guys, kind of decide your intent, then I just want you to know that we are prepared and ready to make the necessary investments to get classrooms up to speed, the facility in a workable and usable, position. And we can do an additional meeting to, financials are required, or whatever you all need.
Yeah, there'll
for
be
that, and to be able to.
all of that.
Yeah, and so understand that the first time that we made this presentation, that, IEJ ended up being assumed by the county, and most of the programs that we had in our package is a part of what they have out there now. So understand, if you guys want stuff from us, then we're gonna require that we have the NDAs and things of that nature in place, per your attorney, to make sure that we can, have, financials that will be, certainly.
Yeah, it was a little different at that time because there was a lot of state money involved. And we couldn't qualify, we spend all that state money and then turn around and get, you know what I mean? It wouldn't have gone well in Raleigh, and they may have clawed back some of that money, I don't know that, but, that was
Well, there's some things that are gonna force us to go slow on the permitting side, parking, paving, all that. We got time to do this right, and we should take the time to do it right and make sure that it, because I think it's a fabulous asset, and I'd like to see it used 100% of the time, right, available, so.
Oh, we've had all kinds of ideas for it, and good ideas, but it's just, I'm not, you know, it's, you know, that magic wand that we supposedly possess doesn't exist, and
Hey, do you know the history of IEA? I mean, do you know what it served?
A little bit, yeah, part of the, well, that's why I'm so interested in getting engagement from the community, because I think sitting over here making a decision without that kind of disrespectful